The wind was cold on Colony World K-47, carrying the smell of metal dust and rusted dreams. Night had fallen across the scrap fields, where broken alien ships and human machines slept side by side. Among the twisted towers of metal, a lone human moved carefully, his boots crunching on glass and bone. His name was Ronan Vale, once a soldier, now just a scavenger trying to survive one more day. He carried a small lantern that flickered weakly, painting orange light over piles of old alien wreckage. Every step echoed between the walls of dead engines. He was searching for a part, a rare power coil worth enough to buy food for a week, but tonight felt strange, too quiet, as if the whole world was holding its breath. Then he heard it, a faint sound, soft and trembling like someone crying. Ronan froze, turning his head, his hand resting on the knife at his belt. The cry came again, weak but clear, a small, broken sob from somewhere inside the mountain of junk. He lifted his lantern higher, its light bouncing off torn metal and twisted pipes. "Hello?" He called out, his voice echoing into the darkness. No answer came, only the wind then. The cry again, shorter this time, more desperate. Ronan climbed over the metal heap, following the sound until he reached a large torn sack made of alien fiber. It moved, just a little, as if something inside was alive. His pulse quickened. Everyone in the colony knew the stories. Alien waste sometimes carried poison, sometimes living traps. Still, Ronan reached out and tore the sack open with his knife. Inside, wrapped in a layer of silver cloth, was a baby. He stumbled back in shock. The infant's skin shimmered faintly blue under the lantern light, veins glowing like threads of light under translucent skin. Its tiny hands trembled, its breathing shallow. He stared at the creature, alien, but small, helpless, innocent. It opened its eyes, bright purple and full of fear. And then, inside Ronan's mind, he heard a voice, soft, broken, and impossibly clear. "Daddy?" Ronan dropped the lantern, the light rolling away, casting wild shadows. He looked around quickly. No one was near, only the wreckage and the stars above. The voice came again, inside his skull like a whisper of wind. "Daddy, don't leave me." He swallowed hard, sweat cold on his neck. "This is crazy," he muttered, trying to convince himself it was an echo, a trick. But when he looked down, the baby was still staring at him, reaching out one glowing hand. The sound of its heartbeat was slow, fading. Ronan sighed heavily and lifted the child into his arms. It weighed almost nothing, light as air. Its body was cold, trembling, and when he wrapped it in his jacket, it stopped crying. Only then he noticed the small tag tied around its wrist, written in alien script. Half burned away, he couldn't read it, but one symbol looked like a warning. He turned and started walking back through the junkyard. Each step felt heavier than the last. In his head, questions roared. Why would aliens leave a baby here? Was it infected? Was it dangerous? But his heart already knew the answer. It was a baby, and no baby deserved to die alone in the dark. When he reached the colony gate, the guards were gone for the night. The scanners flickering, he slipped through quietly, holding the bundle close under his coat. The colony's streets were narrow and dim, the smell of oil thick in the air. Broken lamps flickered above him as he hurried toward his small homeship. Inside, he placed the child on his workbench. He stared for a long time, unsure what to do next. The baby's eyes followed him wherever he moved, glowing faintly in the dark. Ronan tried to speak, to ask who it was, but no words came. Then, a tiny voice filled the silence again. "Daddy, cold?" He froze, his chest tightening. The voice wasn't through the air. It came directly into his thoughts. He grabbed a small thermal blanket and wrapped it around the baby. His hands shaking. Slowly, the glow in the infant's skin dimmed to a soft silver. Peaceful, Ronan leaned back, staring at the strange creature now sleeping quietly in his arms. "Who are you?" he whispered. The baby didn't answer, but a small smile appeared on its lips. And though Ronan didn't understand how, he felt something inside him shift, a warmth he hadn't felt in years since the war. Since he lost his own family. Outside, the wind howled across the junkyard again. But this time, it carried no cries, only silence. Ronan looked out the window, his reflection pale in the glass. He knew what this meant. Keeping the baby was illegal, forbidden. If anyone found out, he'd be executed or sent to the mines. Still, as the baby slept, its small fingers curling around his thumb, Ronan made a silent promise. He didn't know what kind of creature this was. But he knew one thing. No one was going to throw her away again. Not while he was still breathing. He switched off the lantern, letting darkness fill the room. Outside, the stars shone cold above the metal desert. Inside, a faint silver light pulsed from the small bundle in his arms. The child shifted, whispering one last time before sleep. "Daddy?" Ronan smiled faintly. "Yeah," he whispered back, voice soft and broken. "I hear you, little one." And for the first time in years, the junkyard felt alive again. The night was long, and Ronan Vale couldn't sleep. The alien baby rested inside a small metal crate, wrapped in a thick blanket, breathing softly. Every few minutes, it made small sounds, tiny sighs, faint whimpers, the kind that reached deeper than logic or law. Ronan sat on the floor beside the crate, staring at the child, his mind a storm of questions and fear. He knew the colony's rule: no contact with alien life forms without clearance. Anyone caught hiding alien offspring was labeled a traitor. And yet, here he was, breaking the law for something he didn't understand. As morning light slipped through the cracks of his ship's hull, he finally spoke. "You shouldn't be here." "Little one," he said softly. The baby blinked up at him, its violet eyes glowing faintly like stars underwater. Ronan sighed, rubbing his forehead. "You don't even understand me, do you?" Then a small voice entered his thoughts again, clear but soft. "Lyra." He froze, staring at the child. "What did you just say?" he whispered. The baby looked at him and repeated in his mind. "Lyra, name." Lyra. Her lips never moved, but the voice echoed like music inside his skull. Ronan leaned back slowly. "All right then, Lyra," he said, the name rolling strangely but gently off his tongue. He smiled weakly. "You've got yourself a name," the baby giggled. A faint sound that made him forget, for a second, the danger waiting outside. By noon, he was pacing the floor. The colony patrols were already spreading news. Someone had found alien remains near the junkyard. Ronan's neighbor, Marin, an ex-soldier and old friend, stopped by to share the gossip. She was tall, sharp-eyed, wearing a patch on her uniform. "You heard?" she asked, leaning on the doorway. "Aliens dumped one of their spawn again, right in our scrap field." Ronan forced a neutral smile. "Yeah, heard something about that," he said carefully. Marin shrugged. "Disgusting, isn't it? Those things ain't even alive, just leftovers from their labs." Ronan's jaw tightened. "You think so?" Marin nodded. "They say it's better to burn it before it grows teeth." After she left, Ronan stood still for a long time. His hands were shaking, and his heart burned with quiet anger. He looked at the crate where Lyra lay, her little fingers clutching the blanket. "She's not a monster," he whispered. But deep down, he wondered, what if Marin was right? What if this child wasn't what she seemed? That evening, Ronan turned on the scanner to check her vitals. The screen flickered. Unknown biology detected. Hybrid energy signature found. Hybrid? He muttered, scrolling through the data. Half human, half alien, the machine suggested. His breath caught. How could that be? Lyra opened her glowing eyes and stared at him again. Daddy sad? She whispered into his mind. Ronan's throat tightened. No, not sad. Just thinking. But she felt it. The fear behind his words, the doubt. Her eyes dimmed. Her tiny face trembling, he knelt beside her, brushing his rough hand across her small glowing fingers. I'm sorry, he said softly. I'm just scared. The baby's light flickered brighter, and warmth filled the room. For a second, he could feel her emotions, confusion, hunger, and something pure. Trust. He stood up suddenly, his decision forming like steel inside him. He couldn't hand her over, not to the colony, not to the aliens who left her to die. Whatever she was, hybrid, mutant, experiment, she was also a child, and she had chosen him. He spent the night packing what little he owned, a small hoverbike, some food packs, an oxygen tank, and a few tools. He hid the baby inside a storage crate with a breathing mask. The colony scanners wouldn't detect her energy if she stayed quiet. Just before dawn, he stepped outside, the cold wind biting at his face. The sky above was red from the rising twin suns. The streets were empty, except for the distant hum of a patrol ship. Ronan moved quickly, pushing the crate toward the bike. But as he started the engine, a voice behind him shouted, "Ronan!" He turned. It was Marin, standing with her rifle slung across her shoulder. "What are you doing this early?" she asked, eyes narrowing. "Just heading out for some scrap runs," he lied. She frowned. Strange time to scavenge. The hoverbike engine sputtered. The baby stirred inside the crate. Ronan's pulse raced. Marin stepped closer. "You look nervous." He forced a smile. "Just tired." The wind carried a faint whisper. "Daddy?" Marin's expression changed. What was that? Ronan's heart dropped. "Radio interference," he said quickly. Marin stared for a moment longer, then sighed. "Be careful out there, Vale." "The patrols are jumpy," she said. Walking away, Ronan exhaled, sweat cold on his back. He climbed on the bike. Activating the stealth field, the engines hummed softly as he glided into the desert beyond the colony walls. Behind him, the sirens began to wail. Red lights flared in the sky. Voices shouting over radios. Unauthorized vehicle detected leaving the perimeter. Ronan pushed the throttle, dust swirling behind him. Inside the crate, the baby opened her eyes, glowing brighter than before. "Daddy, they're coming." She whispered. Ronan gritted his teeth. "Yeah, I know," he muttered. "But I'm not letting them take you." He sped into the wasteland, the colony shrinking behind him as the horizon opened wide. The chase had begun, and for the first time in years, Ronan Vale wasn't just running to survive. He was running for someone. The desert of Colony World K-47 stretched endless under the twin suns. The air shimmered with heat and dust, turning the land into a mirror of gold and shadow. Ronan Vale's hoverbike roared across the dunes, leaving a trail of burning sand behind. In the crate beside him, the alien infant, Lyra, slept quietly, her faint glow the only gentle light in the harsh world. Behind them, dark shapes moved, patrol drones, sleek and fast, scanning the wasteland with blue beams. The colony had sent their best hunters. To them, Ronan was no longer a man. He was a traitor, a human who had stolen an alien specimen, and that made him dangerous. Ronan pressed the throttle, the engine groaning. He checked the radar, 3 drones closing fast. 20 kilometers out, he cursed under his breath. "Not today," he muttered. He swerved hard toward the canyon edge. the old mining roots twisting through the rocks like veins. The first drone fired. A red bolt scorched past his shoulder, melting a chunk of sand into glass. Ronan ducked low, weaving between stone pillars. Inside the crate, the baby stirred, her eyes opened, glowing fiercely. "Daddy?" "Danger," she whispered. "I know." "Sweetheart," Ronan said, his voice tight. "Just hold on." The drone swooped closer, mechanical wings slicing through the air. Then, without warning, a surge of invisible energy rippled through the canyon. The sand lifted, the stones cracked, and the drone suddenly lost control. Smashing into the rock wall with a fiery crash, Ronan's eyes widened. He glanced at Lyra. Her small hands were glowing, trembling. "Did you do that?" he whispered. Lyra blinked, confused. "No hurt. Daddy safe." The other drones pulled back, recalibrating. Ronan took the chance to dive deeper into the canyon. He stopped near a ruined bunker, half buried in the sand. The walls were made of old alien metal, curved, black, and humming with faint energy. He guided the bike inside and sealed the entrance. Panting heavily inside, darkness wrapped around them. He set the lantern down and looked around. Strange markings covered the walls, symbols that pulsed faintly when his light passed over them. Ronan recognized the structure, an old alien research station. "Abandoned after the war. Perfect place to hide," he muttered. Though his gut said otherwise, he placed Lyra on a soft blanket and searched the terminal. The old system flickered to life, the alien language flowing across the screen. He activated the auto-translator. Most files were corrupted, but one caught his eye. "Hybrid project terminated." His hands trembled as he opened it. Lines of text appeared. Subject: biofusion between human genetic donors and Norin DNA matrix. Success rate to 0.4%. Emotional resonance link. Confirmed. All surviving infants disposed by order of the Council. Ronan stared at the words, his stomach twisting. So that was it. Lyra wasn't an accident. She was an experiment. Half human, half alien, abandoned like garbage when she survived. He turned to look at her, the small glowing child who had called him Daddy in the dark. Her breathing was soft, peaceful. He felt anger rise in his chest. "They made you, and then tried to erase you," he whispered. He clenched his fists. "Not anymore." Suddenly, the bunker lights flashed red. Motion sensors triggered. A voice echoed from outside. "Human scavenger detected. Prepare to surrender." The drones had found them. Ronan grabbed his rifle and checked the door. Metal footsteps echoed through the sand outside. He looked back at the baby. "Stay quiet, Lyra," he said. But she shook her head, eyes glowing brighter. "Daddy, I help." "No, you'll get hurt," he said quickly, but it was too late. Her small body began to radiate light, brighter and brighter, until the whole room glowed white. The air vibrated, every metal plate in the bunker humming like a living thing. The drones outside froze mid-air, their sensors flashing wildly. Then, silence. Ronan opened the door slowly. Outside, the sand was smooth. Untouched, the drones were still, their lights dead. Their engines melted without fire. He looked at her, the tiny baby, now smiling faintly. Exhausted but alive. "What are you?" he whispered, his voice shaking. She blinked slowly. "Yours," he laughed softly. But it came out broken. The sound of more engines echoed in the distance. Heavy. Deeper. Patrol dropships. They'd found him again. He knew he couldn't keep running forever. He had to find out how to protect her, how to keep her alive. He turned back to the terminal. The last line of the alien file mentioned a scientist, Dr. Zirin. Location: Outpost E17. Ronan memorized it instantly. He packed up everything. wrapping Lyra carefully in a thermal cloth. Outside, the wind picked up again as he climbed back onto the hoverbike. He whispered, "Hold tight, Lyra. We're going to find the one who made you." The baby opened her eyes, glowing softly like hope in the dark. "Go, Daddy." He smiled, starting the engine. The hoverbike lifted into the air, cutting through the rising storm. Behind them, the desert swallowed the old bunker, the wrecked drones still frozen like statues in the sand. The chase wasn't over. It had only just begun. The sun was falling behind the dunes when Ronan reached the old highway that led to Outpost E-17. The wind carried red dust and static, whispering through the cracked bones of dead machines. His hoverbike sputtered, its battery almost drained. But he kept going. Every few minutes, he glanced at the small bundle pressed against his chest. Lyra's light was dimming, her breathing shallow. She had not spoken since the last outburst of power in the canyon. Her body was getting colder, and Ronan could feel her heartbeat slowing. He touched her cheek gently, whispering, "Hold on, little one." Just a little more. The outpost appeared on the horizon. A cluster of tall alien towers, half buried in sand. Glowing faintly blue, it looked abandoned. But the moment he entered the perimeter, lights flickered on, sensing life. He parked the bike near a broken gate and stepped inside. The hall smelled of chemicals and rust. Strange tubes lined the walls, filled with old fluids and floating fragments that looked too human to ignore. Ronan tightened his jaw, moving deeper until he reached a large room where machines still hummed weakly. A single figure stood there, tall, thin, with gray skin and bright eyes. "Who are you?" Ronan demanded. Raising his weapon, the alien turned slowly, voice calm and deep. "My name is Dr. Zirin, once chief biologist of the Norrin Council." Ronan's eyes narrowed. "You created them, didn't you?" "The hybrid children," Zirin sighed. "We did. But we were told to destroy them all." Ronan pulled Lyra's blanket aside, revealing the small glowing face. Zirin's eyes widened, his voice breaking. "Impossible." "One survived?" "She did more than survive," Ronan said coldly. "She spoke, she feels. She saved me." Zirin stepped closer, his expression softening. "Then the resonance bond worked." Ronan frowned. "Resonance bond?" The scientist nodded slowly. "When human DNA was fused with ours, the infants connected through emotion. Not logic. They could sense feelings, pain, love, and fear, but the council called them unstable." He looked down at Lyra, his hands trembling slightly. "She chose you because you felt something they could not." "Compassion." Ronan's heart pounded. "She's dying," he said quickly. "Tell me how to save her." Zirin walked to a console and typed rapidly. "There was a stabilizing serum designed for their hybrid organs," he said. "I can make it, but it will take time." "Then hurry," Ronan said. Placing Lyra gently on a nearby table, the machines hummed louder, mixing chemicals, glowing tubes spinning. Ronan stood nearby, rifle ready, nerves on fire. He could hear the faint hum of engines outside. Patrols closing in again. Zirin glanced at the scanner. "They tracked you," he whispered. Ronan cursed softly. "Then we don't have time." The alien finished preparing the serum, a small vial filled with golden light. He handed it to Ronan carefully. "This will stabilize her body. But remember, her mind is already linked to yours. If she dies, part of you will die too." Ronan stared at him, unsure what that meant, but he didn't hesitate. He injected the serum into the baby's arm. Lyra gasped suddenly, her body glowing brighter than ever before. Her small hands gripped Ronan's fingers. For a second, he saw images flash in his mind, memories that weren't his. A cold laboratory, white lights, the sound of alien scientists arguing. A voice whispering, "We are mistakes." He stepped back. Shaking his head, Zirin looked at him sadly. You saw what she saw. Ronan nodded, breathing heavily. They tortured them. Zirin's face fell. I tried to stop it, but the council erased all evidence. I stayed behind to destroy the files, not knowing one would survive. Outside, explosions rattled the walls. Red alarms blared through the lab. Zirin turned toward the window. They're here. He faced Ronan. Take her and run. Ronan shook his head. You come too. Zirin smiled faintly. I cannot. I'll hold them back. Ronan wanted to argue, but Lyra's voice echoed softly in his head. Go, Daddy. Hurry. He grabbed her, wrapping her close. Thank you, he said to Zirin. The alien bowed slightly. Protect her, and protect what she represents, the bridge between our kinds. As Ronan ran toward the exit, the hall behind him shook with explosions. He turned once, seeing Zirin standing by the console, hands glowing as energy surged through the walls. A blinding light filled the corridor, and then silence. The outpost trembled but didn't collapse. Zirin had sacrificed himself to wipe the data and delay the soldiers. Ronan burst out into the open desert, climbing onto the hoverbike once more. Lyra stirred in his arms, her light stable again, her breathing stronger. Hold on, little one, he whispered. The sky above was filled with smoke and distant gunships. He knew they'd keep hunting him, but now he also knew why. The aliens had created life that could feel beyond boundaries, and that terrified them. They couldn't control love. They couldn't silence compassion. And Ronan Vale, a broken human scavenger, was now the only father to a being that could unite two worlds. As he sped across the glowing desert, the horizon lit by fire and dawn, he whispered softly, We're almost safe. Lyra. The baby looked up, eyes shimmering like stars. Home? She asked, her voice fragile but hopeful. Ronan smiled, a tear rolling down his dusty cheek. Yeah, he said quietly, home, but deep in his chest. He knew this wasn't the end. The council would not stop. The war that began in secret was about to reach every colony, and somewhere in the wind, he could still hear Dr. Zirin's last words echoing, Protect the bridge. The sky above Colony World K-47 burned with light. Flames rose from the dunes as patrol ships tore through the clouds. Searching for one man and one child, Ronan Vale's hoverbike darted between the ridges. Smoke trailing behind like a wounded comet. His hands were cut, his armor cracked. But he didn't stop, the small bundle in his arms, glowing softly against his chest, was all that mattered. Lyra had fallen silent again, her silver skin dim under the red light of dawn. The serum had saved her life, for now, but she was weak. Her little fingers twitched, gripping his jacket as if afraid to let go. Stay with me, he whispered. Just a little more. The colony capital dome shimmered in the distance, a city of steel, built to keep humans in and aliens out. Behind him, the coms crackled. A voice spoke through the static, cold and commanding. This is Commander Rethan of the Norran Council, human. Surrender the specimen and you will be shown mercy. Ronan laughed bitterly. Yeah, I've seen your mercy. He pushed the throttle until the engine screamed. Laser fire streaked past, explosions lighting the sand. He weaved through the debris of old ships, his mind focused only on the dome ahead. There was one way through, the old freight tunnel under the trade platform. If he could reach it before the ships locked on, maybe they'd lose him. Hold tight, Lyra, he said, her eyes opened faintly, glowing violet again. Daddy, tired. I know, sweetheart. Just hang on, he said, voice shaking. The bike hit the tunnel entrance hard. Sparks flying, metal scraping inside, the darkness swallowed them. The tunnel walls flashed with warning lights. sensors tracking his movement. He could hear the drones following close. Ronan slammed the bike to a stop near an old maintenance hatch. He climbed out, cradling the baby, and pressed his hand against the cold steel door. The scanner blinked red, denying access. He cursed under his breath. Then he felt a soft pulse from the bundle in his arms. Lyra reached one tiny hand toward the scanner, her skin glowing bright silver. The door hissed open instantly. Ronan stared, whispering, "You're full of surprises." They entered a wide chamber, forgotten and quiet, filled with old machines and dust. Through the broken ceiling, sunlight poured in. Painting golden stripes on the floor, Ronan laid Lyra down gently on a pile of fabric and looked around. The soldiers would find them soon. There was nowhere left to run. He heard the rumble of engines above. Lyra opened her eyes again. Her voice faint in his head. "Daddy, they coming?" Ronan nodded. "Yeah, I know, but it ends here." He picked up his rifle and stood in front of her. "Heart steady? If anyone tries to take you, they'll go through me first." The hatch exploded open, light flooding the chamber. Armored soldiers stormed in, weapons aimed. Behind them floated a tall alien in ceremonial armor, Commander Rethan. His voice was calm, but cruel. "Step aside, human. That child belongs to the Council." Ronan shook his head slowly. "No," he said, his voice low but firm. "She belongs to no one." Rethan raised a clawed hand. "Then you both die," he hissed. The soldiers aimed. Red dots covering Ronan's chest. Before they could fire, Lyra's eyes opened fully. Glowing with pure white light, the air trembled, the dust lifted, and a soft sound filled the chamber. A heartbeat. Then her voice echoed, not just in Ronan's mind, but in everyone's. "Please, stop." The soldiers froze, their weapons lowering. The commander staggered, clutching his head. All across the colony dome, people felt it, the warmth of her thoughts, the innocence in her fear. "We are not enemies," her voice whispered through every mind. "We are family. We are one." A light spread through the walls. Into the streets, humans and aliens alike paused where they stood, their memories flooding back, wars, loss, the endless hate that never healed, and in that single moment, every soul remembered what they had forgotten, the simple truth that compassion had no species. Ronan fell to his knees, tears burning his face. Lyra's glow dimmed slowly, the light retreating into her small body. The soldiers dropped their weapons, some crying silently. Even Commander Rethan stood still, his eyes wide, his voice breaking. "What? What is she?" Ronan looked up, holding the child close. "She's what we could have been," he said softly, "if we hadn't been so afraid." Outside, alarms went quiet. The city lights flickered as if breathing again. No one moved, no one spoke. The war had ended without a shot. Only a whisper. Hours later, as the suns rose high and the smoke cleared, Ronan stood at the edge of the city, watching light spill across the horizon. In his arms, Lyra slept peacefully, her chest rising and falling in rhythm with his heartbeat. She was small, fragile, but he knew she had changed everything. He whispered, "You did it, little one." Lyra stirred slightly, her lips forming one small word, "Daddy." He smiled, looking up at the wide alien sky. For the first time in his life, it didn't feel empty. Maybe this was what Zirin had meant. The bridge between two worlds. Not made of steel or treaties, but of a single act of love. And so, in the dusty heart of a dying colony, under the twin suns of K-47, a human father and an alien child began something greater than war. A future, a hope, and a story that the galaxy would remember forever.